Hello crafty friends, this is card number 38 in Full Deck Challenge 2. This prompt is skull. I was inspired by this skull and wanted to use it somehow in my art. This is artwork created by a work colleague of mine. We got chatting at our recent work end of year function and we shared our creative journeys with each other. And then when I got to work the next week, he had a little pack for me on my desk with his works inside and some other little bits and bobs that I'll be using in other projects. These little books are illustrated by him. I absolutely love these characters, and when I saw the little skull on the cover, I thought I really want to use it. And I want to find a way to use it, hopefully successfully in today's project, with his permission of course. And I will link his Instagram page in the description box below. I would love if you popped by and visited his page and even hit the follow button. I'm going to start by fussy cutting the skull that I'm going to use. I think it is a perfect size for an altered playing card. And then I'm going to prepare the card as usual by adding a sheet of white tissue paper, and I'm going to use Mod Podge to adhere this. Once I've put the tissue paper down as smooth as I can, I'm going to put a layer of Mod Podge over the top. I'm going to dry this all really well, and then I'm going to trim off the excess tissue paper. You can either use the scissors or tear it. I'm then going to add a thin layer of white gesso over the entire surface of the card. This is to help with the next step for the card. And while that is drying, I'm going to work on the skull. The idea I had was to do like a Day of the Dead or sugar skull as they're known. Never done it before, so let's give it a go. So I'm pulling out my Posca pens and my Artix markers. They are acrylic pens. I think I have way too many colors for such a small skull. And then I also have my fine liners because I'm not quite sure what is actually going to work. I'll start with the Artix marker, but this color is a little too light for my liking. I want the face to be quite bright. If you Google sugar skull, you'll see exactly what I mean. They're very bright with florals and designs. I'm hoping I'm able to get a similar effect. I wasn't loving that turquoise. I'm going to add red over it, which is brighter and I think looks much better. And then I'm just going to continue and make designs on the skull with different colors and different patterns. Just have a lot of fun with this. You could always hand draw a skull and cut that out, or if you have one on a computer, you could print it out, or maybe you have a die cut of one. And then you can use colored pencils, markers, acrylic paint pens, whatever you have to make the designs. As I apply the color, I'm using a black fine liner to go around the design. Then it looks a little bit more like a colored in doodle and a bit more on the theme of sugar skull. This one is a little tricky because the skull is at an angle. It's not front facing, so the one side's got to be a little bit smaller than the other to be in proportion. A little tricky, but it works out in the end, I think. I will definitely be doing this again as I learned a lot from this process, and I think going forward I will use a reference image just to help me with the designs. I think I anticipated it would be a lot easier than what it actually was. It's never too late to join in my Full Deck Challenge. This is Full Deck Challenge number 2. Full Deck Challenge 1 is complete, and I'll put a link to the playlist in the description box below. With Full Deck Challenge 2, we do have prompts, and the playlist for this too will be in the description box. And if you're on Facebook, you can join my group, Full Deck Challenge Group, where all the prompts are available in one of the albums. I took out all my pens, but I ended up using just the fine liners as I needed a fine tip for the intricate details on the small skull. If the skull was bigger, I think I could have used the Posca pens. And here is my sugar skull. Looks a bit more like it's been graffitied, but that's okay. Now, the idea I had for this was to do a similar design as I did on the sugar skull at the top and the bottom of the card to sort of frame it in a way. And in my mind, it looked very different to how it eventually came out. So what I'm going to do, because this took a little bit of a while just coloring in and making the doodles, I'm going to put this in super fast motion just so you can just see what I did, but it doesn't really matter on the detail. Well, it doesn't matter too much. Again, would have been good at the time to have used some kind of a reference photo. That's okay though, this is how we learn. So I carried on, but I wasn't truly happy with how it was coming out, but I didn't give up. I thought as I keep adding, maybe I will learn to love it, or maybe it will look good when it's all done. Then when I was done with that and I put the skull, I thought it's sort of making the skull drown. It's not making it pop out, so it'd be the focal point. So I thought if I cover the designs with some white tissue paper to soften them and push them into the background, that would work. So I've got 2 pieces of tissue paper. I'm adding Mod Podge onto the tissue paper. This one's got a little bit of color on it, so I'm just going to use another piece that's got no color on. And instead of putting the Mod Podge on the actual colored part, I'm scared it's going to smudge or run, so I'm just putting it onto the tissue paper and hoping for the best, because I'm not sure if it's going to cause the colors to run. It didn't. So I'm adding a piece at the top and the bottom, and as you can see that it's sort of lightened it slightly. So drying that well, and then again trimming off the excess tissue paper. Then I thought to add to the background behind the sugar skull, so I'm going to cover the designed areas and add some black splatter. For this I'm using a fan paintbrush and some watered down black acrylic paint. And then to add the skull, I'm thinking I wanted to sort of pop off the card a bit, so I'm using the foam double-sided tape. I'm using it double, so it gives it a little bit of height when I stick it down. But I'm not crazy about this background, so I'm not going to stick my skull down yet. I need to find a solution. I wanted something black and white, so I went through my coloring in books and I found this curvy design, which I think will work well. So I'm just cutting out a piece of it, and I'm thinking to add this at the top and the bottom to cover those colored areas. I don't like the colors anymore. It's just not at all how I pictured it. Because the colouring in page section is a bit wavy, some of the colour might peep through from underneath, so I'm just going to give it a quick cover of white gesso. So we're basically starting with a blank slate. And then I'm going to stick down the colouring in book sections with some Mod Podge. I'm going to add the Mod Podge to the colouring in page and then press that down. Before I stick down the top, I want to add some of the black splatter so it continues up underneath where the wavy bit is going to be, if that makes sense. And then when it's dry, I'm going to trim off the excess. I'm loving the black and white contrast against the colors of the skull. I am going to add the one color into the border. I'm using the green, the same green that I've used around one of the eyes of the skull, just to connect the entire thing. I had a thought to color the borders in, then I thought that defeats my purpose of the two bright borders and it detracts from the skull, so I'm just doing the green. And then I needed something to help the skull pop. I tried a few different things and then I settled on this dark cut in black with these rough circles. I'm adding some orange with my fine liner pen all the way around the skull to give it a bit more brightness and to help it pop off the page. I seem to be using the word pop a lot in this video. I love the swirly feel that the circles give around the skull. I'm going to stick those down with a glue stick. I'm doing this very gently because they are quite fragile, and I'm going to place those in the middle. And then after I place my sugar skull down, which is still on the double-sided tape, I'm also going to use a little sentiment. You can see I had some butterflies and some plain black background that I was trying. I tried a lot of different things. Don't be afraid to experiment. For the sentiment, I want to give it a bit of a background color too, so it shows up a bit better. I have this dark red cardboard, so I'm just going to have a small little frame all the way around the sentiment, and then I want to stick that down with clear craft glue. Fittingly, the sentiment says, don't regret. So I think it fits this, don't regret decisions you've made. You can always make changes. It's never the end of the world. It is just paper craft after all. Another shout out and big thank you to JF, my colleague, who has done these illustrations and shared them with me and gave me permission to use them in my full deck challenge. I really hope you enjoyed this video, a little bit out of the box and out of even my comfort zone, and I hope you were inspired to create your own. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Happy creating. See you again soon. Bye.